2 a.m. axes split the dark, phantom limbs fell, dawn erased every wound. Now my dead cat wails at the door, and the attic walks on unseen routes. It all started when we moved into the house that I live in now. My family and I moved here about 3 years ago. None of the events are in the order that they happened, but I will write them as I remember them. The one that sticks out most clearly is this one. I had a sleepover party, and I invited 2 of my close friends. Let's call them Marie and Susie. We were very excited about having a sleepover. We had pitched a tent in our backyard, and we had pumped up 3 rafts for us to sleep in, sort of as air mattresses. We went out to go to sleep, and we stayed up late, talking, as girls tend to do. Later, I awoke to a noise that sounded like someone was cutting wood. It was about 2 a.m. I looked over at Susie and I said something like, "Do you hear that?" She said yes. Marie was still sleeping, so we snuck around to the front yard, where we have some fruit trees. We saw that one of the tall apple trees was on the ground. It had already been cut down. Then we heard the chopping noise again, and saw a strange figure chopping one of the other apple trees in the yard. Susie and I were freaked out. We ran back to the tent and tried to wake Marie, but she wouldn't wake up, so we ran inside. We were very scared. I was thinking to myself, who would be lurking around in my front yard, chopping down our trees? I was worried about Marie and kept looking out my window to make sure she was okay. I was just drifting off to sleep and Marie came into my room. I didn't tell her. The next morning, I told my mum and Marie what I had seen, but when my mum opened up the curtain, the trees were perfectly intact. Some other strange things have happened at my house. Things didn't start until we had been living here about 1 to 2 years. Strange things would happen, like the toilet would flush late at night when no one was in the bathroom. Stuff would often happen when I was home alone. One time, I heard the back door open and someone walk down the hall into the bathroom and turn on the faucet. It was on for a little while, and I yelled my brother's name thinking he had come home. When I walked into the bathroom, no one was there. My cat died not too long ago as well, and sometimes I see him sleeping in chairs, then I blink, and then he is gone. Sometimes if it is cold outside, I hear him crying to be let in, but when I go to the door, there is no one there. A recent event that happened was that my shoes disappeared. I left them right in front of my door for the next morning, when I would put them on and go to school. In the morning, when I woke up, they were gone. I searched the entire house for hours, even being late to school in my search. They were nowhere in the house. That night, I went to sleep wondering where my shoes had gone to. The next morning, my shoes were in the living room in plain sight next to the coffee table. Surely if my shoes had been there the day before, I would have noticed. In my brother's room, there is a loft that used to be part of the attic, but has since been turned into a loft crawl space where he sleeps. It's right next to the attic, and he says that sometimes he wakes up and hears people walking in the attic. Now our attic is small and you can't walk in it. You have to crawl. But he says that it is a distinct walking sound. I don't know who's in there, but I don't want to find out. That attic door yawned open in the dark, my aunt's dread, our honeymoon terror. Plantation soil bred no peace, even nailed shut, its hunger creaks in memory. Back memories of an incident in the late 60s and early 70s that scared me, so much that to this day I will not sleep within sight of any attic access panel or doorway. When I was a teen, my aunt would tell me of several incidents when in bed. She could see down the hallway and see the attic door panel on the ceiling of the hallway slowly open a few inches and stay that way. It always terrified her, and she always felt that she was being watched. Every time it happened, she would wake up her husband. Of course, by the time he woke up and went to check, it would be closed, and after inspection of the attic, no one would be there. Eventually, she had him nail it shut and no more problems. We used to tease her about it because every house they moved to after that, she had the attic access panel nailed shut. Well, in 1971, I had just gotten married, and after our honeymoon, my aunt and uncle wanted us to sit their home while they went on vacation. Well, being we were newlyweds, it was July, and we were waiting for the fall semester to begin. We jumped at the chance to be alone in a big, beautiful home and finally have some time to ourselves. The very first night we had gone to bed in my aunt and uncle's bedroom, the one that you could see down the hallway from the bed. We had only been there for a few minutes when my husband nudged me and pointed towards the ceiling in the hallway. Sure enough, the attic access panel had opened just a few inches and remained open. We were both absolutely terrified, he whispered, to me to quickly get up, grab our bags, the dog, and get in the car. When we turned on the lights, the door was closed, but just the same, we grabbed our things, the dog, and we were out the door in a couple minutes flat. We spent the remainder of the week with my husband's parents, and when my aunt and uncle returned, we told them what happened. I don't know for sure, but I think this finally made a believer out of my uncle, because that's when he began nailing the door shut. We never slept in that house again. My aunt and uncle were the original owners of the house. They built it. It was built on old plantation property in southern Louisiana, though. Maybe that is where their problem stemmed from. Who knows? We didn't stick around to find out. Well, that's my story. That's why, to this day, I don't like any attic access doors. Also, I can't say I ever saw any man in black. But when I was about 6 years old, as I lay in bed one night, I did see a hand of a man come from around the corner and motion for me to come see. It scared me to death, and I pulled the covers over my head till I fell asleep, and did that for many nights after that. I know I wasn't asleep and could see my parents asleep in their bed from where I was. I'll never forget it. A cold hand brushed our cheeks in the dark, a spectre in an antique suit, peering as we froze. Dawn found the door still locked, but not the secrets that shared our bed. This story takes place in the town of Leavenworth, Washington, a beautiful Bavarian-style tourist village in the Cascade Mountains. My family decided to visit, and we located a bed and breakfast via the internet. The one we found sits on the outskirts of town with a breathtaking view of the Yakima River and mountains. The inn was actually built after the turn of the century by a lumber baron for a summer home. When we first saw it, we were very impressed. The decor features antiques, with each guest room furnished uniquely. The friendly owners live in a basement apartment and, for the most part, remain discreetly out of sight. There are several guest rooms on the main floor, along with a cozy living and dining area. Our room was upstairs and must have once been the master bedroom, as it accommodated all four of us. I loved the enormous window with its view, but I thought I felt something weird upstairs. I didn't mention this because I knew the kids would have been jumpy, and my husband would have lectured me. He doesn't believe in anything unusual. The children each took one of the single beds opposite our queen bed. From habit, we locked the door, even though we were the only people staying on the second floor. The lock was the hook and eye type on the inside of the door. There was only one other occupied guest room in the house. A newlywed couple was staying downstairs, and they rarely came out of their room. Our room was really hot, as it had been warm that day. Eventually we went to bed, and soon everyone but me was fast asleep. I always take longer to fall asleep anyway. As I lay there, I suddenly felt a freezing sensation of something approaching my side of the bed. I was terrified, but not because it felt evil or bad. I was scared by the feeling of not seeing anything, but knowing there was something definitely close to me. I scrunched over in bed as far as I could against my husband. The cold stayed there, so in desperation I whispered, "Please go away because you're frightening me." Soon the cold disappeared, and I was left wondering if I'd imagined it all. I didn't wake up my husband and soon went back to sleep. Around midnight, my husband and I suddenly both awoke and sat up in bed at the same time. We heard loud noises from the next unoccupied room. We looked at each other as the sounds of something heavy being dragged across a wooden floor approached our wall and then bumped hard against it. These noises were loud enough to wake us, but, strangely enough, our kids who were sleeping closest to that wall never woke up. Weariness finally won out and we went back to sleep without talking. About an hour later, I was awakened by what I thought was a moth or large bug tickling my face. I sat up, shook my hair, and turned over to go back to sleep. As soon as I shut my eyes, the tickling began on the other cheek. This time, I was sure it was a spider or something, so I went through the same motions, shaking my pillow and turning over in bed. The tickling started on my cheek again. This went on at least 4 more times until I was wide awake and realized the touch was too heavy for a bug. It seemed like a finger stroking my cheek. Exhausted by this time, I said, "That's enough." Then I pulled my sheet completely over my face, tucked it under my head, and went to sleep. As if the night hadn't been eventful enough, at around 2 a.m. I was sleeping on my back when I suddenly woke up. I turned toward my husband thinking he'd tried to wake me, but he was facing away and snoring. I turned to the outside of the bed and saw an old man in a dark suit standing next to me. His suit looked very old in style and he was slightly bent at the waist with his hands behind his back, looking at me. He seemed non-threatening, even curious, but I totally freaked. I gasped and pulled my sheet defensively up to my neck. Our eyes locked and he looked surprised. Then he simply disappeared, suddenly and totally. I was so shook up I checked our door, but it was still locked from the inside. My husband and kids were sound asleep, so I was careful not to wake them up. Boy, was I tempted. After a very long, stressful time, I managed to get a little sleep. The next morning, I didn't have a chance to mention any of the previous night's doings. My husband sat up on the bed's edge with his head in his hands and groaned. When I asked him if he was okay, he told me that he'd had a terrible night's sleep. Thinking I'd been the one who caused him to sleep poorly, I started to apologize. He interrupted me, saying, "It wasn't you or the kids because you were all asleep. I didn't see anyone, but someone or something kept stroking my face." He went on to say it would start up every time he tried to go back to sleep. My husband was completely at a loss and was adamant that it felt like a person's hand. By our calculations, this happened sometime after I'd covered my head with my sheet and fell asleep. Boy, I'd never seen my husband so at a loss. I then told him about my experiences and we talked about the sounds we'd heard. My no-nonsense spouse, a strict disbeliever, admitted there might be ghosts after all. Together we checked out the empty room next door and found it totally and plushly carpeted. Nothing appeared moved, nor did any piece of furniture appear capable of making the noise we'd both heard. So, that is my story. I do want to say that this bed and breakfast provided one of the most comfortable and pleasant experiences for all of us, with only the above exception. Our whole family wants to go back again because the good far outweighed the scary stuff. Maybe then we can learn about the inn's history and who the old gentleman upstairs is.